Moscow, Riga, Tashkent, Leningrad, Kiev,
Ведь во все ночи мы ни разу не макаем нашей пищи, а в эту ночь макаем дважды. Ведь во все ночи мы ужинаем.
How is this night different? How is this night different from all other nights? That's the question that Jews asked in Moscow, Birobidzhan, Kiev, Astrakhan, Leningrad, Riga, Novosibirsk, and all the other cities throughout the Soviet Union, where this year, for the first time in Soviet history, public Passover Seders were held under the auspices of the Joint Distribution Committee. The Passover Seders held in the Soviet Union this year were one of the biggest operations that the JDC has undertaken since World War II. The idea of the Seders was conceived in the New York offices of the JDC. Immediate contacts, telegrams, telephones, telex, and fax were made with the Ministry of Religions in Moscow, which looked favorably upon the project. But when it came to logistics, it seemed at times to be an almost impossible mission. Azriel, the JDC's partner in Israel, joined the operation, organized the Israeli factories for the baking of matzot and the preparing of kosher Passover food, impossible to obtain in the Soviet Union. The kosher wine, the Haggadot, with Russian translation, were also part of the cargo to be sent. In Israel, 22 couples, religious Zionists, were chosen to lead the public seders. They underwent intensive preparations.
It was an intensive course. We were expected to deal with a lot of topics. Most of them were not dealt by us before. And the surprise was that most of the things that we were prepared for, we have met when we came. The only thing that we can say at the end of this mission, that every step that we proceeded during the mission just enabled us to adore the preparations that we have got before. It was outstanding. We just thanked the people that enabled us to see how a network can be such ready before having anything done in the field.
The Aeroflot plane that was supposed to fly the cargo directly from Tel Aviv to Moscow never arrived. With the help of El Al, an alternative was found. Complicated and roundabout, but nonetheless effective. The cargo left Tel Aviv and flew to Cologne in Germany. From there it was sent to North Germany, where it was loaded onto a ferry to Helsinki, Finland, and from there it went by truck to Moscow. Local field workers oversaw the entire operation.
בתחילת מרץ נקראתי לישיבה עם מנכ"ל הג'וינט,
At the beginning of March, I was called to a meeting by the executive vice president of the JDC, Michael Schneider, and was told of the JDC plan to organize 30 Seders in the Soviet Union. The aim was to cover the country from north to south, from east to west. The logistics seemed almost impossible. We turned to various Soviet sources and officials who understood the importance of this, even for the Jewish communities, and who were extremely helpful, with the result that everything arrived on time. The cargo had to be sent tens of thousands of miles by air and land. When you look at the map of the Soviet Union and see the distances involved, you can see that an operation of this kind is almost impossible. But the impossible became possible. The cargo and the Israeli emissaries brought Passover to every corner of the Soviet Union.
We were the first Israeli couple in Birobidzhan. You must imagine how far it is from Moscow. You have to fly from Moscow 8.5 hours till Khabarovsk, and then another 3 hours by train to Birobidzhan. Birobidzhan is the capital of the Jewish Autonomy Region since 1934. Although in the city you can see a lot of Yiddish letters on the railway station, on the municipality, in the library, in every building. Although it is written in many places in Birobidzhan in Yiddish, they know nothing about Yiddishkeit.
We went to Novosibirsk, which is the capital of Siberia, and just the name makes you shudder, not only of cold but of fear. What we have found in Siberia, in Novosibirsk, was a cold town with very warm Jews there.
The younger generation of Vitebsk really has no idea per se of what Judaism is. I think there's a national awakening, as there is in all kinds of nationalities in Russia. They don't exactly know why, and actually the first awakening was to the Yiddish culture, in that they wanted to have classes that taught them Yiddish and that promoted Yiddish literature.
Many of the people didn't even know that Yiddish and Hebrew were two different languages, just as an example of their ignorance.
Of all of the thousands of synagogues that were once dispersed across the Soviet Union, only a handful remain. The glorious synagogues of the past have become warehouses, granaries, or sports centers. Thus, only a few of the Seders could take place in synagogues. Glasnost brought a new spirit and attitude by the Soviet authorities toward the religious and cultural needs of the Jewish people.
In the first day when he came to Kharkov, we had heard an announcement that there was official decision of the Council of Kharkov to give back the central synagogue of Kharkov. It was one of the greatest in Europe. That was taken by the government 50 years ago to give it back to the community. Was very surprised and very happy, because our first main goal and mission by the joint is to organize the Jewish life, the Jewish community, the Jewish social and religious and social life around the synagogue. So to hear in the first day that the synagogue is coming back to the Jews, for us it was, we call it a miracle, Nes min hashamayim, and some of the people said Nes min hashamayim for the joint, because it was in our mission.
Jewish life that had been dormant began to reawaken. The arrival of the Israeli emissaries drew many people to the synagogues. Each community, each ethnic group, and its unique traditions. In Moscow, in Tashkent, and this is how they worship in Kiev.
When we came there, they actually knew very little about the Seder. There were a few of the older people that still remembered a Seder in their childhood. One woman came to us after the Seder and told us this was the first Seder she had participated in 48 years. And when we were in the synagogue, it turned out that the older people had been carrying on Seder clandestinely in their houses over the past years. They didn't want anybody to know that they carried on anything like that.
Including
and of
their
course,
children
including
and
their own
grandchildren.
children and their grandchildren. And the young people had no idea that anything like that existed.
For 70 years, they forced our Judaism out of us. And if not by force, then by fear.
At this holiday, I feel great enthusiasm and joy because I finally feel myself Jewish. It is now possible to do what before it was forbidden even to think about. Now I have the chance to feel that I am among friends.
The Seder and everything around the Seder and the preparation for the Seder awakened, I think, every Jew in Novosibirsk to the feeling of being Jewish and to the feeling that he belongs to the Jewish nation and he don't live alone somewhere in the cold.
Now they were together. The men of the Bukharian congregation in Tashkent dressed the Israeli emissary in their own traditional costumes. Many Jews required basic explanations about Judaism and the holiday, about candlelighting, blessings, and prayers.
זה תל אביב, תל אביב, ירושלים, חיפה, טבריה.
Until now, the Holocaust was usually the focus of Jewish education and Jewish life in the Soviet Union. Near Babi Yar, a memorial to the inhabitants of Kiev who were slaughtered there, and of whom 100,000 were Jews. But on the monument, there is no mention of that fact. Today, one can mention the fact. Now in Riga, on the site of a synagogue that was destroyed, a monument will be built. But the fear of being identified as a Jew still exists. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring. So even as they prepare for a public Passover Seder, the mezuzah in the synagogue of Tashkent is placed inside the building.
In the morning of the Seder, we had a meeting with the people. We wanted to prepare the synagogue, the shul, for the Seder. And all of a sudden, we saw the amount and the organization of what arrived. It was unbelievable. And all of a sudden, all of the synagogue was full of crates. And the crates were full of everything. Starting from matzot, going to wine, the decoration for the place. And what we had to do was to take off our jackets, took out the jacket, took off the ties, and stood on ladders and on chairs. And all of a sudden, the community started to work. before and after, we realize that they do not have the frameworks and the ability of working as a group.
אני לא יודע, עכשיו אני לא יודע. זה צריך
Everyone takes part in the preparations, which last until the very start of the holiday. Hours before the Seder begins, people gather at the entrances to be sure of a seat. Many new faces are seen. Faces of young people, acknowledging their Jewish identity for the first time. So it is in Leningrad. So it is in Odessa. On the one hand, I feel like everyone. Good that something is materializing, that we can come and celebrate our holiday in peace. On the other hand, this one Seder is not big enough for the number of Jews who have gathered here. Even those who can't find seats at the Seder come to be together, to feel a sense of belonging, to feel the special atmosphere of Jewish awakening as the Israeli emissaries of the JDC conduct the Seder. On this holy day, we sit here, and all over the world, at exactly this moment, the children of Abraham, wherever they may be, are celebrating the Passover holiday like the sons of kings. The Jewish people is a people which is inseparable from the concept of freedom. Every detail of the holiday, every bit of food and what it symbolizes, every prayer recited is explained during the Seder.
праздника Пасхи.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
Аминь. Вот
скудный хлеб, который ели отцы наши в земле египетской. Каждый, кто голоден, пусть придет и ест.
Let all who are hungry enter and eat. All who are needy come and celebrate the Passover. This year we are slaves, but next year we shall be free.
In de eerste moeder, de ganze Zeit, können wir so feiern dem Jontef Pesach, wie mit antiques Jahr gemacht. Organisatia Joint провела.
The JDC brought us an important and valuable reminder to all the Jews in the Soviet Union who we are.
Agit Jontef, deine Brüder.
The Seder leaders guide them through the Passover songs and other traditional Jewish melodies that recall the homes of parents and grandparents, taking them back to their Jewish roots.
In my entire life, I never knew how a Seder was celebrated. I am over 50 years old, and this is the first time I am celebrating this holiday. My fears and my curiosity are mixed up inside, so it's very difficult for me to explain my feelings.
We returned from the concentration camp in 1944, and my father came back in 1945. Until 1951, we celebrated Passover according to all the rules. My mother tried to get all the proper foods, and my father knew all the laws of the holiday. Later, when the synagogues were closed, it was no longer possible to celebrate. So after 40 years, this is the first time I'm able to celebrate the holiday. You should all know that in every Jewish home in Israel, on the night of the Seder, there is an empty chair. And this chair is a symbol of our cry. The cry we repeat today, "Let my people go." Here too, we have left an empty chair. A chair for those Jews who have not yet made the journey. Many of the Seder guests are from the Soviet and international media. The story of the Seders is broadcast worldwide and in the Soviet Union, as on Birobidzhan television.
Седер продолжается долго. Проводится в первые 2 дня второй недели апреля. 9 и 10 апреля жители Биробиджана собрались в зале кафе «Юбилейное» на пасхальный седер. Помощь супругам Плессер в его проведении оказывали члены городского общества дружбы и культурных связей с Израилем.
One of the highlights of any Seder comes when the children recover the hidden afikomen needed to complete the service. The finder is entitled to make a wish. I would like so much to be in the Promised Land and to see with my own eyes all that is happening in Israel. Later, the piece of matzah, and perhaps the wish, is divided up among the guests. There is no holiday joy without song, without dance, at every Seder, whether in Tashkent or Kiev.
This is a must. This must not be a one-time thing. This has to carry on. There's no question we felt like we were a lifeline between the Jewish people in the world and what was left in Russia. And this lifeline must not be broken. We certainly felt that
the
joint project had given a great deal to the people, and we got that feedback, and I think it's very important.
For 70 years, Jewish life in the Soviet Union was frozen, covered by snow. The Passover Seders organized by the JDC brought a new spirit into Jewish life, a new spring and a ray of hope. Word of the Seders carried far beyond the cities and towns where they were held. Plans called for 6,000 participants. But in 27 public Seders in 24 cities and towns throughout the Soviet Union, there were nearly 11,000. These public Seders were a moving and emotional event for the Jews of the Soviet Union and for the emissaries of the JDC.
After the ceremony of the Seder that we have with 250 people in Birobidzhan, the next very nice ceremony that we had in Birobidzhan was a special ceremony for leaving of two first families coming from Birobidzhan to Israel. One of the nice presents that we got from Birobidzhan, that these two families are now with us in Jerusalem to be here in Israel with us.
Many of the Jews who were meant to participate in the Seders found themselves instead on the way to Israel, making the flight to freedom. By sheer coincidence, when that Passover plane load of immigrants landed in Israel, two other planes also touched down at Ben Gurion Airport. They carried 1,000 New Yorkers on a UJA mission to Israel. The unplanned rendezvous was an unforgettable emotional experience. Another Passover miracle. At the JDC Seder in Birobidzhan, two sisters asked the question, "Ma nishtana?" How is this night different from all other nights? They received an answer in less than a week. In less than a week, they were in their new home in Jerusalem with their families. The question, "Ma nishtana?" The answer in the words to another Passover song. Once we were enslaved. Now we are free.
אתה בני חורין, בני חורין.